Chain lube. According to renegade riders, this is an industry trick to make us spend money on something we don't need. Or more conspiratorially, on something that actually helps chains to die sooner. Such treachery! Such cause to investigate at once after some branding. What is chain lube for? Well, lube, lubrication. Most motorcyclists will say lubrication, but most motorcycle chains say no. Let's prefix our test with a piercing game of Pictionary. Motorcycle chain makes morons like me think of metal-on-metal links. And these should require lubricant. Oh, no shit, half-wit. But plain chains paint too simple a picture. 95% of us don't run these anymore. Our asinine asses are pulled around by O or X-ring chains, which are internally, permanently lubricated. And you have some outer plates here that hold fast to rivet pins, and then inner plates which do not. And right here is where your pivoting happens. So there's a bath of factory grease to smooth that along. But here's the part I can never seem to get through my head. No matter what you put on your chain, it can't touch this. If it could, that would mean that your factory seals are shot, in which case the chain is about as useless as a ventilated condom. Now sure, there's also movement here where the O-ring joins two independently moving plates. But whatever bollocks moose power your lubricant claims to find, it won't really decrease the friction between the seal and the steel. Your wallet will.
If you're poor like me, you bought O-rings. These squish to a relatively large contact area. Nitrile on steel doesn't produce a ton of friction, but multiply by 2 seals per link, 100 some odd links, well, suddenly the chain doesn't like to bend that much.
Rich bitches with their fancy X-rings get less surface area. They get a second fail-safe seal, they get some extra grease slipped in between, they get a chain that bends easier. If an O-ring chain steals 1 horsepower on its way to the ground, a fancy X-ring anklet is gonna take only about half a horsepower. But wait up, wise guy, there's also friction here, where the chain contacts the sprocket. True, but that's why we have rollers, so they can hit the sprocket and then pivot relative to this inner bushing. And that's happening right about here. And putting lubricant on the outside of a roller is not gonna help anything. In fact, it simply will not stay there. It doesn't matter how clingy your lube's film strength is, the monstrous force of a motorcycle cast it aside like a one-night stand. Wherever rollers contact the sprocket under pressure, the lube gets squished away. This is not the inside of an engine. There's no system constantly resupplying oil under pressure. Chain rollers will be metal-on-metal contact within a few rotations, and that's okay. So, what is chain lube for? Well, the primary answer, as manufacturers are unafraid to admit, is rust prevention. Which is awkward, because WD-40 will do that, engine oil will do it, hell, cooking spray should do it. Of course, there's also a second reason to lube modern chains, and that's to replenish this tiny bit of unsealed grease between the roller and the bushing. Maybe some fancy lubes will stay there longer. Maybe penetrants like WD-40 will seep in there better. Maybe some of them pick up so much salty, abrasive grit that they undo their own benefit. These are the conspiratorial questions we ask. Now let's test some answers. Bel-ray Super Clean is the most popular conventional lube, perhaps because it dries white and that takes the guesswork out of application. But you pay for it, it's 22 bucks a can. Maxima Chain Wax is only 12 bucks a can and rivals Bel-ray's popularity for that reason. It's a wax-based lubricant, paraffin to be precise, so it should excel in repelling water and rust. Oxford's Mint Dry Weather Lube is the opposite. It's not waterproof at all, but it contains PTFE, a substance like Teflon with one of the lowest coefficients of friction ever measured. Nothing will stick to this stuff. It should win our grit pickup test. Funny side note, Oxford is legally obligated to warn that sniffing their product can kill you, yet they made it smell like tasty mint. Muc-off boasts an equally feckless feature, in that it glows in ultraviolet light.
I don't know about you, but I keep many black lights in my toolbox. And of course, I want to keep my overspray patterns hidden to everyone except Nancy Drew in the cast of CSI. Not.
Anyway, this long-distance chain lube uses ceramics to be exceptionally durable. Tiny dots in the formula roll around like a million ball bearings, simultaneously creating very low friction and also an armadillo-esque coat of armor. Muc-off says you can go longer between applications. Critics say that ceramics are abrasives at worst and a gimmick at best. We'll see. Modal C5 chain paste goes on like paint, so I never worry about spritzing my brake disc by mistake. I also never worry about throwing it in my side case only to pop a lid and soak my undies in aerosol. In fact, without needing a carrier to propel active ingredients through the air, you probably get more of the good stuff in 150 mils of this than in 400 mils of the others. It's the refined choice. WD-40 is your famous water displacer rust preventer. And we saw in the last test video that it makes a passable chain cleaner. So if it survives our lube tests, that's gonna be a damn tempting one and done. Gear oil is another cheap fix. It's also what my current chain recommends, which I'd have known a long time ago if I actually read the instructions that came with it. Most chains suggest something thick, 75, 80, 90 weight, so it doesn't fling off everywhere and turn your motorcycle into a Greenpeace wet nightmare. And finally, cooking spray, because I'm curious if household lubes do a passable job, and this is the most PG-13 one I could find.
The contestants are given 10 minutes to dig in before being assaulted by salty water, blown completely dry, and then soaked once more. How much rust appears will be our measure of a lube's ability to hold its barrier against rainy, windy rides. Muc-off and bel-ray invite all their Ferris friends over to party. There are some middling options who keep it to a small gathering, then Maxima and Gear Oil completely lock the door on rust.
However, we know that replenishing the roller's lubricant is also relevant.
The fluidity of this rotation is what we're trying to isolate. So I harvest a bunch of inner links, as always from a brand new chain, then strip them of existing grease with a nice relaxing gasoline bath. The links are then re-lubricated with each of our chain lubes and left to dig in or dry out, as the case may be, overnight. I place the first link on a scale and use a rubber wheel of constant power output to get the rollers rolling. Pressure is slowly applied until the friction force beneath the rollers overcomes the force of our electric motor.
This control link, which was stripped with gasoline but never re-lubricated, grinds to a halt at a mere 380 grams of pressure. If our lubes do anything to decrease that friction, they should stay spinning under heavier loads than that.
So Muc-off's ceramic balls are no joke. Neither is Maxima or Gear Oil, both of which slipped beneath our rollers similarly well. It seems that WD-40 had the least benefit over an unlubricated chain. My guess is that it penetrated alright, but evaporated overnight.
So we've tested what we want our lube to do: stop rust and roll rollers. But there are also a couple things we don't want it to do. Make a mess of our rear wheel, and pick up abrasive grit.
8 test subjects are thoroughly cleaned, lubricated, and given time to set. They are spun at a constant speed, and the splatter pattern is observed at a constant distance. The chains are then allowed to pick up a teaspoon of conveniently colorful grit and flung for another 10 seconds.
True to its name, bel-ray's super clean chain lube left our spray catcher pretty clean. A visual inspection of the chain shows that it's stuck to a decent amount of dirt though.
I'll spare you the tedious repetition of a life in science, which I narrowly, if not completely avoided, and zoom ahead to the results. In order of messiness, cooking oil, WD-40, Maxima, and engine oil immediately sling off the chain and make a murder scene of my index card. Meanwhile, muc-off's slimy long-distance lube holds true to its name, durably clinging to the links and therefore leaving nearly no splatter. Grit Adhesion hosts the revenge of the reasonably priced, with WD-40 and cooking oil keeping their noses clean. Oxford's Teflon-loaded dry lube also, unsurprisingly, does well. Modal, gear oil, and muc-off are middling, then bel-ray and Maxima lubes, picking up every salty, abrasive, chain-killing kernel they come into contact with. So we have 4 scores from 4 tests: rust prevention, roller lubrication, anti-splatter, and anti-grit. Thus, our combined ranking is finally set. Assuming that performance in every area matters to you, I'll note that gear oil, Oxford, and modal are the most consistent contestants.
So, I, for one, will never buy chain lube again. Gear oil is what most manufacturers recommend, and almost as if they'd done R&D on the subject, it proves to be the best choice. I had hoped WD-40 would make a passable lube, because cleaning and greasing my chain with one cheap thing would make my heart sing. But alas, science cares not for our hopes and dreams, nor their hopes and dreams of selling an inferior product for 15 bucks a can. Stay greasy, my friends.